and welcome to Reliving My Youth. My name is Noel. My guest this week is John Ford Coley. Now, John is a Grammy-nominated multi-platinum selling artist who is best known for being one half of the 70s duo England Dan and John Ford Coley. Their Yacht Rock masterpieces include I Really Love to See You Tonight, We'll Never Have to Say Goodbye, and the Todd Rundgren cover, Love Is the Answer. We talk about how he got together with Dan Seals, how Herb Alpert, who co-founded A&M Records, finally decided to sign them, and how I Really Love to See You Tonight fell into their laps. We also talk about John's solo work that are now finally on streaming sites, including Sketches Volume 1, which came out in 2021, and the album was recorded throughout his career, but it was finally released 4 years ago. And it included the song Falling, which he wrote with Dan before Dan unfortunately passed away in 2009. We also talk about the playful rivalry, if any, with Seals and Croft, who Jim Seals was Dan's brother. We also talk about how they avoided falling into the one-hit wonder category, the whole Yacht Rock explosion. Really enjoyed my conversation with John, and I hope you do as well. So, John, thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, the streaming release of some of your albums, including Sketches Volume 1. But I want to start with something that's really topical to these days and kind of near to dear to my heart is what's going on in the Middle East. And you had a song a couple of years ago that is more prevalent now, I think, than ever. I mean, it's always prevalent over there, it seems like, but I Stand With Israel. And I know you performed there, one of your live albums, but just talk about how that song came about and just your kind of like love affair with Israel.
I've studied Israel. I can't remember. I can't remember when. As a matter of fact, I remember at one point I was reading so many books. Started out with O Jerusalem and then the Source, and ended up with what was it? What was her name? Gwella Cohen. Diary of a Young Terrorist, and I read, the Irgun, and it, all during that partition time. It was just so fascinating to me how it had come back around. As a matter of fact, I not only wrote a song, but I've got a book called I Stand With Israel. And what it is, I study in the synagogues. I wanted to get the foundation. I've been there for close to 20 years. And I just took all the biblical prophecies out of the Tanakh, what Christians call the Old Testament, did a couple from the New Testament about the revival of Israel, how it's going to come back up, and God's going to bring the people back, and the room, all these kinds of things. So that's what it is. It's just biblical verse after biblical verse of what it says and how it's going to come back around. So, I mean, literally. First of all, for those of you that are Jewish, I was born on the 10th of Tishrei.
Okay.
In 1948. That's Yom Kippur. I was born on the Yom Kippur of the first Yom Kippur that was held in Israel as a state. So I kind of felt tricked, And then when I was about 8 years old, we had a vacation Bible school, and they would send us to various places. So they sent us to a synagogue, and they must have had a minyan. It was during the daylight hours, morning prayers, davening, and I still remember the two men standing there in their tallits with the earlocks, holding the Torah. I'm 8 years old, and I was smitten. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I knew that there was something there. And I've had instances of that nature just come along on a daily basis. And I just go with it. At one point, I was reading so much, like I said, that I picked up a copy of Golda Meir's book. And I looked at Nancy, our publicist that traveled with us all the time. She was Jewish. She had become, the same religion that I was. And I said, I think I'm going to have to stop, because if I read one more book, I'm going to become Jewish. Because we were in synagogue at the Reformed one time, And one of the rabbis was trying to encourage people to go deeper into things. And he said, well, has anybody here read The Source? And I went, yeah, I have. Well, I'm the only goy in the room. Nobody else has read it. And then he says, has anybody read Oh Jerusalem? And I went, yeah. And I'm looking around, nobody else has got their hand raised. And he says, has anybody else read it? I said, yeah, I did. It's like nobody else had read. And
Right.
he said, man, you know more about us than we do. I said, yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah. When my oldest son was bar mitzvahed about 6 years ago, friends of ours, their son was in temple. It was the first time, and he was fascinated. He's Christian. He was fascinated just by being there, by everything, and he kept like talking about it for weeks. He's like, "This was amazing." I'm like really fascinated about the whole thing. So I'm like, "Wow, I mean, that's good," because I know some of my Jewish friends are not at all. So it
Yeah.
was good that he was kind of taken to it.
Well, it was funny for me because when I went into the synagogue for the first time, I was invited to Kiddush, lunch after the
Right.
service. I walked in and I saw that big bowl of tuna and that big bowl of egg salad. And I went, I think I have found my people. It was like, that was great because
Yeah.
those were things that I'd eat all the time.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And egg salad on a bagel, delicious.
absolutely. In
It's
the
great.
lox and just, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of your albums finally came out on streaming, including Sketches Volume 1, which I absolutely love. And it's kind of like you opened up your vault and just kind of recorded and released these songs. How far back do some of these songs go?
They go back at least 20, 25, 30 years, some of them. I was just looking at various songs one day, just going through the catalog that I had. And my friend, Tom Worth, who produces things with me on all the records, he came over. And I said, Tom, what do you think of this song? And he went, wow, man, that's a good song. He says, what are you doing with this? And I said, nothing, sitting in a drawer. What do you think of this one? And he's the same reaction. So he said, you need to take these songs, put them on a CD, just release them as is. And so I said, well, some of them are completely, because they were in films, so they're produced right. Some of them are just demos. Some of them are things that I just put down. I never got the opportunity to really, take them any further. And he said, no, put them out as is. I said, okay, that's a good idea. So then all these songs have the opportunity to be heard. That's what I was really looking at. I wasn't really looking at it as we're going to get a new record out here. It's going
Right.
to be, we get the opportunity to hear these things. If somebody likes them, great. So that for me was, putting that whole thing together.
Yeah. And one of the songs was Falling, which
Right.
I believe Dan had a little hand in.
Dan and I wrote that song. It had to be 1975, something like that. And it never made it to the album because our producer said, "Yeah, it's a song about being on the road, but, missing everybody back home." And he said, you can't have it both ways. You can't be out on the road doing what you want to do and then missing everybody back home and wishing you were back home. So he didn't want to do the song. Well, Dan and I just kind of said, okay. We just kind of gave in on that because we had other things. And I was thinking about the song because I played it and I went, no, I love this song. I'm going to do it myself. So I just sang the lead and then threw the harmony on top of that, where before it would have been Dan singing and I would have sang the harmony. But I mean, I love the song. It's just such a simple kind of love song.
Right. No, it's absolutely
And,
fantastic.
and if you were to realize how few love songs I write, I mean, it's kind of nice to have a love song in there.
Yeah. And I feel like most of the songs you write have a story to them.
They do.
And like songs from that era, even up to the 80s, 90s, had stories,
Right.
within the song. And I feel like now the songs don't. And I feel like the artists now kind of went a different way, not incorporate stories into their songs.
we joke about it a lot. You know, the lyrics now are kind of like, oh, there's a box over there sitting by my yoga mat, you know, and there's the humidifier and clock on the wall. And you kind of go, you're a songwriter? Is that what you're calling yourself these days? What do you do? I mean, the one that I laugh the most at now, as far as songwriters, is the oh. And I joke and I tell people now when I do Sad to Belong, I just don't feel that this song got the real chance that it deserved. You know, I said, so we're going to do this, remake it, do it for the younger audience. So it's going to be, it's sad to belong, to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, be a hit, you know.
Yeah. It's like when you have to write an essay, like 100 or 500 word essay, and you write very like 10
Yeah,
times in a row just to, get all the words in there.
absolutely.
Yeah. With, some of the releases to the streaming sites of these albums, like what are your thoughts about like streaming sites now?
Well, okay, this is a deal where music changes and it's a format to sell things. For me, I'm old school. For the kids, this is great. I prefer having an album in my hand. I'm very tactile.
Right.
I love liner notes.
Me
I
too.
like to know who wrote the song. I like to
Yep.
know who produced it. Tell me the stories, you know, on what happened.
Yeah.
That's not this generation. So they've moved up. As a matter of fact, we did which one was it? It was sketches. We actually had sketches just up on streaming, but it wasn't getting the reaction from my audience because they're older
Right.
that it would, you know, it was doing it, but I went, no, we got to do something else here. So we ended up, you know, making a physical copy of it.
Yeah.
And
And,
it's like, you know, even with the CD players, several years ago, I got a truck and I said, well, there's no CD player. And he goes, yeah, you know, they're not doing that
yeah.
anymore. And I went, you want to sell a truck? And he goes, absolutely. And I said, then put a damn CD player in here and you'll sell it
Right.
because I got all these CDs, you know, and that's what I want to listen to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I still have thousands of CDs, but I didn't have a CD player anymore. So
yeah,
I had to buy one because I love listening to, like you said, even like albums. You look at the album cover, and I feel that's a lost art now. And you mentioned the liner notes and
yeah,
just the track list, the listings of how songs are,
right.
placed. I feel now it's just like everything's on demand. I mean, it's great. You can listen to music on your phone anytime, but I still like the physical copy kind of bringing me back to my youth, listening to an
Well,
album, CD, or whatnot.
you know, we came from a generation we were reading cereal boxes at
Yeah,
breakfast, you
exactly.
know, so that's what I kind of would do. I'd sit there and listen to the album and read the liner notes
Yeah,
and go, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that was so and so playing on this.
yeah, absolutely. So going back to that era, how did you and Dan first meet?
Dan and I actually were in high school together. We didn't know one another. He was a year ahead of me. Plus, he was on a work program, so he wasn't at school all that much anyway. And he was in a band called the Playboys Five. A guitar player quit. The other guitar player wanted to be the lead guitar player now, so he convinced everyone we need a keyboard player. So they found me in ROTC. They found out that I played. I went over, auditioned for the thing. Now I'm classically trained. I mean, you know, I know more about at that time I knew more about playing rock and roll than I knew about open heart surgery,
Hmm.
you know. And so I got the gig. Dan didn't want me there. I avoided him. He left me alone. And then sometimes we'd have to drive to gigs together. And we found out that we could sing together. We'd play Peter and Gordon and Simon and Garfunkel, and you know all these bands that were big. I mean, the duos that were big during that time. And we discovered that we had a natural blend. Dan would always take harmony because he had such a terrific uh, uh, lead voice. I gravitated toward harmony and we just built that sound over those years.
Yeah. How did you guys get signed to A&M?
A&M was actually kind of a funny thing. We'd gone to Los Angeles a couple of times, no success. And Louis Shelton, who was part of the Wrecking Crew, he was a guitar player, so he played like the run on Last Train to Clarksville
Okay.
with the Monkees and Boyce and Hart, and he's playing with everybody. It's like Glenn Campbell, Joe Osborne, Hal Blaine, all these people were the session players in Los Angeles. He took a liking to us and took us to Herb Alpert. And he said they're kind of a cross between Simon and Garfunkel and the Bee Gees, the Bee Gees at that time,
Right.
not the
Not the disco
disco
kind. Yeah.
guys. And Herb said, "Well, this is, we really don't have any room on the roster for that." And Herb said, "Just take the tape and listen to it." Or Louis said, "Just take the tape." And the story comes back, and Herb was shaving. He's listening to the tape. He's about halfway through. Said he wiped the shaving cream off his face, called Louis and said, "Louis, get him out here."
Hmm.
And that was how we ended up on A&M Records.
Wow. Do you know what song was playing when he kind of
I,
had the
I have
revelation? Okay.
no, but I mean, we had pretty much all the ones that were on that first record.
Okay.
And I think New Jersey was the one that got the most action off of that.
Right. Yeah.
And Herb Alpert, by the way, is one of my favorite people. He was so good to me. And Dan, and I went back later on, was even on the label. And he's one of the people. He was a musician, first of all,
Right.
and I truly admire that man. He was very good to me.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah. I know like one of the big songs that come out was Simone. You know,
Uh-huh.
it was huge everywhere but here. I know like
Everywhere but here. Yeah.
yeah. I guess you were big in Japan, so they say, right?
Right. We went over 2 weeks with Three Dog Night playing over there. And that was great. I mean, this was my first time in Japan. And it was fun to be able to go over and play that song there.
Yeah. And I'm sure now you mentioned you played in Israel and Japan. Like what besides Israel, what's your favorite country to perform in?
The Philippines.
Philippines? Okay.
I mean, yeah, I love Asia. The Filipino people are some of the best in the world. The food's great. They all speak English. They laugh, which is they don't look at you like you're crazy when you say something funny. They just
Right.
all laugh, and I love it. So.
Yeah. Right. How do you like think like some of your songs like translate in certain countries and some don't?
Dan had a country influence. I had a classical influence. So when we would write, you're going to get those elements in there. And during the time that they were going country, more or less, radio was much more open. So you'd hear Kenny Rogers, playing on the AM radio or, album rock, and you'd hear other people playing on country. They liked the song. It wasn't so much about your country, your pop, your
Yeah.
rock. It's like, no, man, we love the song, so we're going to play it. And I've kind of learned to write, especially living back in Nashville, because I guarantee you, if you've not been back here and been around some of the writers in this town, they will eat your lunch for 3 days in a row. When I came in, I thought, okay, I've written hit songs. I've been on the radio. I got chart stuff. So I'm not new to this. I got my lunch handed to me when I went to Nashville. The thing that I learned the most is that I've been playing guitar a long time, and I'm a guitar player. No, they're guitar players. I'm a guitar owner. That's how it
Yeah.
works. And so I would play with these guys, and I had the presence of mind to always stop them when they would play something I didn't know. I'd go, "Whoa, stop! Would you just play?
Yeah.
Show me how you did that." And my guitar playing improved exponentially
Right. So how did your songwriting improve then?
because they are outward thinkers. I'm internal, so they're external. I'm internal. I write by myself a lot. I would get with those guys. They bounce off of one another. And so you're trying to keep up, and they will write a song. you'll get a call the next day. Yeah, this can be better. We can straighten out this second course. Third day, I've been thinking about this, and they write and write and rewrite. And they are definitely into it for the craft of it, to make it as best song as they possibly can, not just string a bunch of words together and say, yeah, we're done. We did that.
Did you ever take offense to them, like ever, like kind of like reworking or criticizing one of your songs?
No, I did not. No. I remember one time I brought in an idea, and I thought it was a pretty good idea. And the guy looked at me and he said, nah, we can do better. And I looked at him, I said, no, you don't understand. That's the idea I've got. There is no plan B behind this idea. That's all I
Right.
got. And he said, no, we can do better. And he did.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And then
you,
back to
you just have to be open with things, because with with Nashville, if you don't like something you've got, you can rewrite it. If you are attached to something that somebody else doesn't like, you can always use it somewhere else. And you never lost it. It's always there. If you need to come back, and we've done that to where, that really was the best thing. We'd write with paper, nobody erased anything. And
right.
so you could come back and you could find that and go, yep. So you never lose anything.
Yeah.
Just be open to it.
Right. Do you still write with paper or now a computer? I mean,
I still write with paper. Occasionally I do a computer, but more or less I'm tactile.
yeah.
So I like to see, and when I write it out, I visualize it. So I don't have to go back and look at it. I can see what in my head what was still there.
Yeah. When you said you would write solo, individually, was that
Uh-huh.
including with Dan, or did you guys have sessions together writing?
Well, Dan and I actually we had a very Lennon McCartney
Okay.
approach to writing when we first started. It didn't matter who wrote it; we both took credit for it. And half of the songs I might write by myself, half the songs Dan might write by himself. Then we would get together and we'd collaborate on songs. Somebody'd have an idea, they might bring in, a third of a song, and then we get together and we do that. So, and then when we got into what I call the commercial aspect of our career, really love to see it tonight, Dan wanted to start taking solo credit for things. And I went, well, okay, it's fine with me because I write more than you do.
Right.
So doesn't bother me. And that's what we did.
Okay. All right. So then, back to kind of like your story with the band, or with you and Dan, I should say. You guys get released from A&M, and
Right.
then I guess took a little bit, but finally Big Tree Records from I guess
They
Atlanta
finally picked
owned
us
that,
up. Yeah.
picked you guys up, and then kind of that's when you guys blew up. How did you guys get signed to Big Tree?
Actually, the funniest story happened with that. I mean, you can tell I'm a storyteller. I've written a book and stuff.
Right,
But we had an open invitation to Atlantic Records. They just had not found what they called the single, the radio song. And just said, no, keep coming back, come back. You guys are going to hit it. We love the group. You guys are going to hit the record. So they talked Dan and I into doing Really Love to See You Tonight, which neither one of us wanted to do. We thought it was a
right,
female song. And our manager took it in to Bob Greenberg at Atlantic, played it for him. Before he could say anything, there was a knock on the door, and there was two men. He let them in, and he introduced them as Doug Morris and Dick Vanderbilt from Big Tree Records, the subsidiary of Atlantic.
right.
And they're just talking, just introducing everybody. And our manager, Susan, is thinking, okay, guys, it's time for you to go. We're trying to do business here. And so finally, Doug Morris looked at Bob, and he said, what do you think of that song? And Bob said, Susan, I'm sorry. I don't think that's it. I just don't think that's the song. I says, I'm going to pass. And Morris said, you sure you're going to pass on that song? And he goes, yeah, we're going to pass on it. Susan's so dejected. Morris says, Susan, we want the song. We want the group. They heard the song through the wall.
Wow.
That's how we got signed.
Wow.
So, you talking, I don't believe in coincidences.
Right.
But that was closest thing to a coincidence that I've ever seen.
Yeah. And the song was written by Parker McGee.
Parker McGee. Now, the funny thing about Parker is that he was a good songwriter in Mississippi. And Dan and I, we want to be our own songwriters. We want to be singer-songwriters, known for that. So we're having to fight our egos with this guy writing this song that we're having to record. After I saw the first royalty check, which actually came early, I found out just how mercenary I could be. I found myself calling up Parker, going, Parker, hey, buddy, what else you got?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, because again, we're going to keep working. That was the object of the exercise, was to stay on the field.
Hello, yeah, it's been a while. Not much. How about you? I'm not sure why I called. I guess I really just wanted to talk to you. And I was thinking maybe later on we could get together for a while. It's been such a long time and I really do miss your smile. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight. We could go walking through Windy Park, take a drive along the beach, or stay at home and watch TV. You see, it really doesn't matter much to me. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight. I won't ask for promises, so you don't have to lie. We both played that game before. Say I love you, then say goodbye. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't.
The other big song you had, well, one of them was a Todd Rundgren song, "Love Is the Answer."
Yeah, Love Is the Answer.
Yeah, which
I never thought, I was a Rundgren fan from the word go. I never thought we'd have the opportunity to do something by him. So that was such a great song.
Did he ever reach out to you guys to offer his opinion of the recording?
No, not on that level at all. I talked to him a couple of different times. I mean, in a silly sort of way, Todd Rundgren was the stepfather of Liv Tyler, Steven Tyler's daughter.
Yeah.
And so he's raising her during the time that thing is bringing him money in. So I just jokingly say, yeah, we kind of made Todd's life easier so that he'd have money to raise his daughter. So I kind of feel responsible for Liv Tyler a little bit.
Right. How much did your life change because of Early When I See You Tonight?
The thing is that it changed in the fact that we were working a whole lot more. We had some recognition. But my story, and I told this in the book, we get our first gold record, the first gold album. That was the first gold album that Big Tree Records had had. They'd had a couple of singles, but we got the single and the album. And we were in Toronto. And I'm walking down the streets of Toronto on Yonge and Bloor, and I'm kind of in shock still. And I'm saying to myself, I got a gold record. I got a gold record. That quick, I said, now what the hell am I going to do?
Right.
Because you've reached this level. Now you got to go to the next level. And that's uncharted territory. You've been kind of this way, but you've been busting your can for years on this. Now you hit this because you're in a different league. And for just a little bit, I was scared. That was kind of depressing. Because again, can we do it? Are we going to end up being relegated to the one-hit wonders category, which I don't want to be?
Right.
And so, you accept those challenges. I knew we could do it. I didn't have any doubt in my mind that we could do it. I just didn't know how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
So that's how it really changed my life.
Right. And thankfully, you guys didn't fall in that category because you had
No, we
a
didn't.
bunch of hits after that. So that kind of solidified you guys. Yeah.
I just tell everyone that, at a certain point in my life, I feel like God just reached down, kissed me on the head and said, go for it, kid, have some fun.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Yeah. Did you guys have a little too much fun during those times or no?
No, Dan and I wish that I had. I mean, I've got a friend that I talk to sometimes, and she had a pretty wild existence, and mine was very tame because we were in this religion. So you've got to maintain some kind of dignity and honor, and you can't, overstep certain bounds and things of that nature. And I go, sometimes I hate you because you had all this fun and I was stuck in all this stuff. I was definitely in the place to have some fun. But then again, by the same token, I was just listening to Corey Feldman's new book, and I was in a film with Corey. Loved Corey. He's a great kid. Him and Haim both.
Yeah.
And I'm reading or listening to the troubles and the debauchery and all of the things that went on in that industry, and I missed it. So, six of one, half dozen of another. You can have a lot of fun, or you can not go through a lot of the pitfalls and problems that other people have had over the years. I mean, I never did drugs. I never drank. I didn't drink because when I was a kid, I got sick to my stomach all the time. So I'm playing in bars all the time.
Right.
And I watch people, getting drunk and throwing up everywhere and just thinking, yeah, that looks just like tons of fun to me. So I never did it.
Right.
Well, because of it, I remember everything. But Dan came up to me when we after we'd split, we were kind of getting back together doing stuff. And he said, yeah, I remember the time that we did such and such and so and so. And I said, yeah, well, that was actually here. It wasn't here.
Yeah.
And he goes, I never argue with you. You got a photographic memory. I just don't argue with you. I don't have a photographic memory. He goes, well, you remember everything. So.
Yeah. Right. After you guys, I'm not going to ask you why you guys split, but after you guys split up, how long did it take for you guys kind of just to reconnect a little bit on a friendship level?
It took a little while. The intriguing thing about the industry where you start gaining a little notoriety, when Dan and I were close.
Right.
We ended up being closer than brothers. We literally could read one another's minds. And we never argued. We reasoned things out. We didn't fight. There's other groups, they get into knockdown dragouts. Dan was very reasonable. I was reasonable. We just say, this is the problem. And we'd sit there and we'd work it out.
Okay.
At the end, you've got people that start to breach that, a connection.
Yeah.
You've got, and before you know it, nah, man, you're the lead singer. You're the guy. You're the guy. No, man, you're the writing the songs. You're the guy. So if it wasn't for, and you start to fall into that and you believe it. It happens to just about every group I've ever known. Right. So there was all of those obstacles to overcome. I've had people ask me before why Dan and I split. I normally don't touch that subject, especially now because Dan's dead.
Right.
And if anything you hear is going to be my side of the story, Dan's not here to defend himself. Right. So that, in my estimation, is not an honorable way to do anything.
Yeah.
Dan, and I'll just tell you this. The night before Dan passed away, we spoke.
Okay.
And it was just Danny and John. None of the crap, none of the nonsense, none of the silliness. It was just Danny and John. I don't have any regrets. I'm not fighting, I would have said this in the shower kind of. It's right. Like, no, I love Dan immensely. That's it.
Right. That's great. Okay. Glad that worked out though.
Yeah. It did.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did he get the name England Dan? And I know you have a stage name too, but John Ford Coley. How did that happen?
Actually, my last name was Coley. So it's Cooley, Conley, everything but Coley. So Jimmy Seals said, let's drop one of the L's like Red Foley, make it Coley, give you the name Ford, John Ford, the director.
Right.
And immediately, when you said John Ford, I went, yeah, but I'm thinking John Rip Ford, the last Confederate general in the War for Southern Independence that won the battle at Palmetto. And he buried a lot of the guys from the Alamo. That's the guy I'm thinking of. So I went, yeah, great. I love it. And Dan had always, when the Beatles came out and everything, he made the attempt to mimic the English accent. Now, if you've ever heard a Texan try to mimic anything except maybe an Alabama accent,
right.
It's comical otherwise. Yeah. So he got that name, and we were looking for a name. England Dan and John Ford Coley just flowed. It was the best thing that ever happened to me as far as visibility and recognition, because if you hear John Ford Coley, it clicks and you go like England Dan and John, and I get that all the time. Or you say, yeah, well, England Dan, they go, and John Ford. So it fits together. But when I would play, I had recognition. It's like right now we have kind of a thing going on between the people that are originals in bands and people that are tribute bands. In essence, they might have one person,
right, yeah, and
they're going out as that band. I'm 50% of the original band. I had a 50-50 chance to begin with, but
right.
I had that. So when I go out, I'm the last surviving original member of that band, and my name was in the band. Yeah. So you talking about fortuitous? That was fortuitous.
Right. Yeah. I've had members of bands, I'm not going to name, who just have one surviving member, and it's just maybe the lead guitarist. And they go through lead singers like milk every couple of weeks. And I guess if fans can appreciate it, that's all that matters. Because if the fans didn't appreciate it, he still wouldn't be performing. But it's not the same, I feel.
No, it's not the same at all. They come for the music, which is what they should be coming for. But I often think, well, I had a guy, the manager of Dan, he said, have you considered getting another England Dan? And I said, not a chance in hell. So I'm not going to cheapen the brand. First of all, it's not England Dan. Okay. No. But we know it's not. So No, I'll go out and play by myself, which is what I enjoy doing. I
Yeah.
worked a long time and hard for that. And we just play those songs. And the thing that I discovered is that because I sing the harmony, when you play I'd Really Love to See You Tonight for sake of illustration, one guy, you know that song. You hear the harmony.
Right.
You hear all the instruments. You know it. Now, if I get up and I play a song that's brand new that no one's ever heard before, that's an entirely different animal.
Yeah.
They'll look at me like a cow at a new gate, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not this, and you
Yeah.
go, okay, I get it.
Right.
So
Yeah. So when you go out and you're performing, John Ford Coley, and you're playing, your songs with England Dan, from years ago, and then all of a sudden you play a new song from sketches or
yeah.
something like that. Do you kind of notice the audience reaction? Like maybe
Well,
they go get
I
a beer and go to the
introduce it.
bathroom, or they kind of get the phone out. Do they kind of like
Sometimes they do. And I've learned that because people have come to hear memory lane and to go down that
yeah,
direction, I play mostly the things that Dan and I did. I might play a new song, maybe one or two,
right.
because that's not what they've come for. I might play something like Leader of the Band,
Yeah,
something they would recognize.
right.
However, I never play other people's songs. There's only two songs that I play that I didn't have anything to do with. And that's the thing. You recognize that they have come to hear those songs. You can talk about the new record and you can say, I've got it in the lobby. If you'd like to hear it, you can
Yeah,
talk it up, but you don't sit there and play the entire album. That's not what
right,
they came for.
right.
It's business. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just pure and simple. It's business.
right. I had John Oates on a few years ago, and I asked him, like, you ever consider doing like an albums tour? Just playing one, maybe two albums, front to back each, night. And he's like, why? We play the hits, and that's why people come. I'm like, okay,
That's why they
fair enough.
come.
I mean, I'm like a, obsessed fan, so I want to hear other ones, but I totally get there's more
Yeah,
like, the kind of fringe fans that want to hear, the top 10 hits, and
right.
that's it. Yeah.
Well, you've also got the element that you have to realize that most people are only connected to the hits because that's what they hear
Played
all
on the
the
radio,
time.
right?
Name me one song that Queen does other than Bohemian Rhapsody and We Are the Champions or Fat Bottom Girls.
Mm.
That's all you hear on the radio. What about all the other cuts that were on the album? They
Yeah,
don't even know what they are.
right.
So that's what you play.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you feel like you and kind of the other bands have a revival because of the whole Yacht Rock explosion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That has been one of the best things. And now we're getting to play with one another. I never played with Al Stewart, Ambrosia, Player,
Yeah.
any of these bands before that came up. Now we're all out there. I do 4 to 5 songs when I go out and play. Uh, the other guys come out and they do a couple of songs and you get a variety. Somebody loves Ambrosia. I'm going to go see Ambrosia. John Ford Coley, I don't know who he is, right? Well, then I get to play, and they go,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah, I
yeah,
know
I
them.
remember." Yeah,
Yeah.
so you gain a new audience all over again, and it's been such a boon for us.
Yeah. Do you even know where that term came from, Yacht Rock?
No, but I kind of get an idea. There was years ago, I was in Los Angeles, and there was a radio station called KLOS, and they had Mark and Brian. And these guys are hard rock,
Yeah.
that's where the album rock stuff came from. Well, when I was impersonated by a guy,
Oh,
they
that's
had
right.
me on the show. So then I come back again, and he said, we take your songs and we go out on the yacht, on the boat, and we play your music real loud. And I went, now that's funny. You
Yeah.
play my music real loud.
Right.
Come on, I can
Yeah.
just imagine. That's hilarious.
Yeah. No, it's because one of my favorite stations on satellite radio is the Yacht Rock station, and it's
Yeah.
I listen to it like pretty much all day between that and some, like some of the other things. So it's great, and I'm so glad that it's had a revival because I
Oh,
remember
me
listening
too.
to it with my mom in the car, like 40 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's great. Do you remember where you were the first time you heard one of your songs on the radio?
I was driving. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was actually a song that Dan and I had done on our first, well, it was England, Dan and John Ford Coley. We had the Southwest FOB in Texas, so we
right.
had the one song that's playing everywhere,
Yeah.
television, radio. But the first time that I heard one of Dan and my songs was on a radio station driving my wife back from work. And surprised me. And I'm listening to it, and it was a very slow song called Winning Side. Halfway through, the guy must have realized he hit the wrong cut and he pulled it off. And I
Oh,
went,
wow.
whoa, wait a minute. That
Yeah.
was a good song.
Right.
But it got short. I cut short by half.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's funny. And like your songs are like, elevator friendly, store friendly and stuff like
yeah,
that. So where's like the most interesting place you heard one of your songs?
gosh. I think it'd probably have to be something like Home Depot or something like that. The grocery store, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's the joke that they tell about the elevators? Oh, it was Kenny G. Kenny G hears a
Yeah.
song on the elevator and he steps off and he goes, "Whoa, man, this place rocks."
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the same thing. But I mean, it's been such a boon for us because it's kept us alive.
Right.
And that's something that we never anticipated. We thought we're done. That's it. So relegated to the limbo of obsolescence. You're
Yeah.
gone.
Right. But
So,
thankfully your songs are gonna live on because they're fantastic. And good luck with the upcoming tour and then sketches on streaming. And I can't wait to see you guys with was it Ambrosia, right? You said Peter
yeah,
Beckett. Yeah, that's going to be a fun show. So I look forward to
it
seeing
is a
you.
fun show. And we've changed it around now. Instead of one person coming out and doing their entire set and then the next one, now we come in between one another.
Okay.
And it just flows so much better, and you get to hear a variety real quick because you don't know which song each person's going to play when they come out.
Yeah, that's great. Have you ever like maybe after the show, if you do meet and greets, had a fan come to you and say, "I can't believe you didn't play that song"?
Yeah, I had one. And as a
Okay.
matter of fact, I damaged my hand a couple of years ago, so I can't finger pick in the way that I
Okay.
did. But I had a woman come up after a show one time. She said, "Well, I was kind of disappointed in you tonight." And I went, "Oh God, man, I don't want to hear that." I said, "What
Right.
happened?" And she says, "Well, I was hoping you would play Who's Lonely Now." And I said, I'd have played that song in a heartbeat for you if I knew what it was. And she said, "What do you mean you don't know what it
Yeah.
was?" I said, "I don't know that song." And she said, "But you and Dan sang it." I said, "No, we didn't." She said, "No," I said, "I'm not mistaken. You
Right.
both wrote it." And I went, "Okay, let me get back to you on that." We did.
Wow.
I mean, and I
Yeah.
had forgotten about it, and I had to go back and I relearned it in a different way because I thought
Okay.
that it could have been better in things. But it was kind of like, yeah, I've had things like that happen before, and you just kind of go, "Oh, we did that? I don't remember that." I mean, somebody put something up on my Facebook the other day, and it was a song that Dan and I had done, written by Jimmy Seals. I don't recall that song at all. And
Right.
it was the B side of some record, and I don't even know what that was. So it's like, okay, I've got a pretty presence of mind. I remember most
Yeah.
everything. So I don't remember that one.
Oh, yeah. Don't
So
argue with the fans. They're
yeah,
hardcore. They
don't
know.
argue with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And one last thing, you mentioned Jim Seals, who was Dan's brother. Was there ever kind of like a playful rivalry between Seals and Croft and you guys?
It wasn't a rivalry as such. We played with them all the time. Dan was very close to Jim. I was closer to Dash.
Okay.
Dash Crofts, I met him years before we had a recording contract. He is the type of person that if there is a problem between you and him, I can tell you who the problem is, and it ain't him. That's for sure.
Right.
That guy was the easiest going man I think I've ever come across in my life. You know, I remember one time we were driving. He's driving around his bell bottoms. He had this big old Edsel, it was a boat. And we're going down to the Sunset Grill to get something to eat. Just barefoot, got his long hair. And this guy pulls out from the stop sign right in front of us. Okay, I'm hot tempered. I'm ready to pull the guy out and have him give him a good talking to, right?
Right.
Dash sends the guy his hand on the wheel and he goes, if it means that much to you, take it. And I went, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
he was just so easy going, you know.
That's yeah.
But
I'd be more in your camp with that than
absolutely
Yeah.
hot blooded, hot tempered, you
Right. Yeah.
know.
But John, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And a special thanks to John for joining me today. Check out all of his solo work that are now on the streaming sites, as well as his work with Dan Seals, England Dan. Check out his website, johnfordcoley.com. And if you have a guest suggestion, you can hit me up on X, formerly Twitter, at @TheFirstNoel19. Be sure to like the page Reliving My Youth on Facebook. You can go to iTunes, check out all the past episodes we've had, and I'd really appreciate it if you left a review. If you don't have iTunes, not a problem. Shows on SoundCloud, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music, basically wherever you can find a podcast. A new episode will be out soon. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you then.